Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon. I'm joined here with Oscar. And today we're going to look ahead to all the CONCACAF teams at the World Cup. There's 4 teams, USA, Mexico, Costa Rica, Canada. We're going to look at each team, give a brief preview as well as a prediction, a realistic prediction for how far they're going to go. If that sounds interesting, then let's hop right into it. The format for this video is we're going to go by group, look at all 4 CONCACAF teams. We'll start out with the US, then Mexico, then Costa Rica, then Canada. We're just going to look at, the individuals on the team, standout players, maybe the manager, things like that. We don't have enough time to look at like a full formation, every single squad, stuff like that. And then from there, we'll look at the strengths and weaknesses of the team, and those 2 categories can complement each other, bleed into each other, and then we'll go and give our predictions for each team. So let's start out in the mother country, the USA.
The USA.
So what do you think about this squad? I personally think it's a very talented squad. There are some weaknesses, which I'll get onto, but what do you think? Who's a standout player, in your opinion? Or a few standout players?
A few standout players. Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic. There are a couple standout players. It's fascinating too because they're all young and playing in Europe. So they won't just be here for 2022, they'll be here for 2026 and 2030. So they'll be stars for a long time. And you can see that there's a core as well. Their goalkeeper, Matt Turner, he's in Europe. It's his first season. He could also be here for the next 2-3 tournaments as well. So that's a good core to have going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think Christian Pulisic, of course, Captain America, the star of the team. All eyes are going to be on him. You also have a guy like Weston McKennie, who is, out of all the midfielders, I think the most talented and most consistent midfielder. He's playing for Juventus. Juventus isn't doing great right now, but he, in particular, in my opinion, is good. He's a good Serie A player as well. Now, if you look at a guy like Brendan Aronson, I think he has the talent ceiling to be the best player on the team. However, because of Greg Berhalter, I don't think he'll be played in his best position. I think he's best in the center. Greg doesn't really like to play with a number 10, so I don't think his skills will be utilized to his potential. I think he can still make a good showing at the World Cup. You mentioned Matt Turner. I think Matt Turner is a great goalkeeper, and I think he's going to have a good tournament. I think that a guy like Timothy Weah, depending on what team what teams we go up against in certain games, I think he could be a really good asset as well. But since we looked at the players, I think it's very worth mentioning the manager.
Okay.
What do you think of Greg Berhalter?
Well, he's done well against Mexico, and I think that's the main thing that counts, right? And there are some disappointing factors. The fact that there haven't really been that many goals lately. The fact that also, the U.S. botched the CONCACAF qualifying, finishing in 3rd when they could have easily finished 1st, right? Those are some things that do worry me going into the tournament, as well as the fact that they're still, again, you say, not playing with number 10, not having their number 9 down. These are things that you want to have down months before the tournament, and we're going into it right now, and there's a lot of holes. In the friendlies that they played recently, they haven't looked great either. So there's not much room to turn it around, but to be fair, you're not going to change now, and there's some consistency. The same figures are coming around. It's not like he's going to bring in players last second, or he's calling upon players from olden days, like, let's say, Bradley, or for example. He does like his core. So at least you know what you're getting going into the tournament.
Yeah, I think that he's an okay manager. I think the U.S. could be doing a lot better, though. I just think that, he makes some erratic decisions. He makes some really weird formations. He has some, little ticks that he's just very stubborn with. Like, for example, I think John Brooks is our best center back, especially now that Miles Robinson is injured. He's not going to.
Is he still a free agent, John Brooks?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But he, not only does he have World Cup experience, he scored against Ghana in the 2014 World Cup. He's just a very, very reliable defender. And for whatever reason, Greg Berhalter doesn't like him. He says it doesn't really fit his system or something like that.
Right.
He's not a ball-playing center back, something like that. So I think that Greg Berhalter, a lot of times, is the issue with the squad because it's a very, very talented group of players. Now, okay, yes, they don't have the experience of like a world-class team yet, but they do have a very, very talented squad of players, and I think they're just held back by Berhalter. He makes some really weird formations. He has some, really weird squad selections as well. Now, saying that, I do give him a lot of credit for just the spirit that he brings with the team. If you look at how the U.S. played in the summer of 2021, where they beat Mexico in the Nations League, then they beat Mexico in the Gold Cup with
a B-minus team.
A B-minus team.
Yeah.
And then they went on and beat them in the qualifiers. In each of those games, the U.S. actually really didn't play that good, but the spirit was there. That carried over even with the C team. You had that same fighting spirit, and that's something that the USA lacked for a while. Now, we don't see that as consistently throughout all the matches. We saw that in the biggest games, but obviously at the World Cup, all the games there are going to be big games. So hopefully that'll carry through. And obviously, I try to be optimistic. So, I hope Berhalter makes good decisions and doesn't do anything dumb. But,
or erratic.
Yeah.
The World Cup, yeah.
So as for predictions, you look at the U.S., they're in the group with England, Wales, and Iran. I think that England is by far the best team in the group. They should pretty much throw up first place. Even if they don't dump a load of goals, their defense is very strong. I think Wales is kind of a wild card. They could be really good on the day, but then they could be pretty bad.
It's actually funny because I see the U.S. beating Wales. Out of any of the three teams, I see us actually beating Wales.
Yeah, I think it's very likely the U.S. beats Wales, especially since Bale himself hasn't been in that great of form in the MLS.
And there's less tension between that match than the match against England, for example. A lot less tension, a lot less pressure.
Yeah. I think the match against Iran could be interesting because I think Iran is actually a very good team. I think they're a very underrated team.
The striker they have playing for
Mehdi Taremi.
Taremi.
Yeah.
He's firing in goals for not only his country but the club. He's won the Champions League.
Yeah, so that should be tough. But I think the U.S. has a more talented squad than both of those teams. I think there is a gap. Obviously, there's a huge gap between England and the rest, but then there's a gap between the USA and Wales and Iran. So, but USA doesn't have really that much tournament experience. Iran's been at the last 3 World Cups. You have players. A lot of the players that were at 2018 are now coming back. Wales, they weren't at the World Cup, but they were at the Euros. So I think that it's pretty equal. It's not a guaranteed second place finish for the U.S. I ultimately think they'll pull through, and then in the round of 16, I think the U.S. could face Senegal, Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I don't think Qatar is going to top the group, so I think it's probably going to be Senegal or Netherlands, most likely Netherlands, and then I think that would probably be the end of the road for the U.S. right there.
I'm a little bit more pessimistic. I think the U.S. will finish third, barely. I see England, Iran, the U.S., and then Wales. That's how I see Group B going.
I could easily see that, and I don't think that's unrealistic. I think just the talent that the U.S. has is going to pull them through. But like I said, if Bale has just a wonderful game, like Wales just play to Bale's strengths. So let's say the opening game against the U.S., Wales draws the game or wins, that's pretty much it for the U.S., I think. Because then we'll have to, get a crazy result against Iran, and I don't think we're beating England. So, that could be it. It's hairline margins here. And then there's also the whole political controversy. I mean, the USA and Iran are not on the most friendly terms, so that could throw a wrench into it. Last time Iran played the U.S. at the World Cup in '98, everyone thought the U.S. was going to win. Iran came out 2-1 winners. It was a very just up in the air kind of game. So who knows, So, but I'm saying round of 16 exit. You're saying third place.
Third place
finish.
in the group.
All right. So let's go on to Mexico.
All right. So Mexico, not looking so hot. We are in a tough group, which I think got even tougher by the fact that Saudi Arabia canceled or paused their league, and are playing six friendlies leading up to the World Cup as well. So there's no easy no easy team to play. Poland is probably the most evenly matched group, and then we are Argentina's dogs when it comes to the World Cup. So it's not looking great. We have our own stripes with our manager. Tata Martino, although did wonders in other clubs, right? So for Newell's and even other World Cups, he coached Paraguay to the quarterfinals in 2010. So
LA
miracles.
United, Barcelona, Estudiantes, I believe.
Yeah, he's a coach of the world.
Yeah.
So miracles can happen, and we know that he is talented. I just don't think he has the same energy. He has had some health struggles, to be fair, that he did back in 2019 compared to 2022. That's not great. We rely on much of the same core. We have an old squad, a very young back line, and our main figures, Vela and currently Chicharito, are not in the national team setup. These are all the problems. So that's why I'm not too hopeful. So I wasn't bashing you for saying the U.S. finishing third. I think Mexico could potentially finish third as well. But there's that hope in me because the coach has been capable of miracles. Mexico in 2014 also pulled out a miracle, right, in getting out the group and beating Croatia, right, that we could clinch second. There's a hope, but I'm leaning towards third.
Yeah, I think when you look at this squad, I mean, it's not a bad squad, but like it's not a bad squad in like the context of CONCACAF. But if you compare it to previous Mexico squads, I think this is a very, very poor Mexico squad compared to years past. I mean, you just look at their star players. Raul Jimenez, like he's not the player that he was pre-COVID, pre-head injury.
He hasn't scored this season in the Premier League, I don't think.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him. Now, obviously, the talent is there, and the World Cup can bring out the best of individual players. Look at a guy like Chucky Lozano. He's okay. Like he's not, but I still feel like he hasn't reached the height of it. Like back in 2018, you're like, oh, look at this young and upcoming player. He's still kind of at the same level as he was in 2018. If not, maybe even regressed a little bit. But talent is still there. But like you were saying about the back line, that back line just does not give confidence. Like if I was a Mexico fan, I would not be confident in that back line. Like, of course, you still have Ochoa, and Ochoa shows up for the World Cup. Every single World Cup, he shows up.
And he plans to make a sixth one. He plans to make 2026.
So I wouldn't put it past him. I think you mentioned it. Striker is a big issue. I mean, we just talked about Jimenez, but I think Chicharito deserves a spot in this team. I mean, just a World Cup experience. He was at 2010, 2014, and 2018. Isn't he Mexico's top scorer?
He is by a distance too. He has 52 goals for a national team, and that's the experience you need because he scored against Argentina in 2010. That's the type of experience you need.
Yeah.
I would say beyond that, though, what do you think about the besides players who are X'd out because of the coach, we also have players who will be out of the World Cup potentially through being injured, right? That is Jesus Corona and potentially Raul Jimenez. Are these big misses for the national team?
Jimenez, yes, but only because just the name, it's seeing a big name like that chalked off the guy that was, the number 9 for a long time. That should be a little bit of a morale hindrance.
Yeah.
On the field, not so much. Corona, though, I think that's a big miss. He is a very talented player. I'm never going to forget that goal that he scored against Venezuela in the 2016 Copa America. It was like a Messi-like dribble. He just went through the entire defense. That moment of brilliance is something that could decide a game. Like, let's say it's tied 1-1 with Poland. You bring on a guy like Tecatito, and he just goes on and scores. He's going to be a big miss, in my opinion. And then, you talked about Tata. I think he's a good coach. It's just not working. Like if you're a good coach, it's not going to work with every single team. Whatever the dynamics of the team that just isn't fitting with his style. You mentioned health issues. He's also a much older guy. So it's not working with Mexico. And I think, honestly, Mexico probably should have sacked him last summer. Like the 3 consecutive losses to the U.S., that should never happen. Like if that happens to the U.S., like let's say we lose 3 consecutive matches to Mexico, that coach has got to go.
I think that's what nicked Bob Bradley back in the day, consistently losing to Mexico in the end of his tenure with the U.S.
Yeah.
And the fact that we didn't do the same is a little bit wild.
Yeah.
Where do you see them going in terms of each game, right? So the first game I view as the most crucial, the one against Poland. Do you think Mexico is actually evenly matched with Poland?
I think Mexico is very evenly matched with Poland. I think Poland is similar to Mexico in many ways in that, they have a squad that has some talented players, some average players, but overall they're a very inconsistent team. So we don't know what Poland's going to show up. If it's the Poland that completely outplayed Sweden in the playoff to get here, easy win for Poland.
Oh, scary, because we
However,
lost to Sweden
yeah.
in the last World Cup,
Yep,
3-0.
yep. However, if it's the Poland that lost 2-1 to Slovakia at the Euros, pretty easy win for Mexico. So it depends. Lewandowski, he's not as consistent for Poland as he is for Bayern Munich or Barcelona. Obviously, world-class player still for Poland, but he just doesn't have the same service. He has to play a much different role where he has to kind of create chances, create space for himself. He doesn't have, world-class guys sending in balls to him. But, I mean, you look at a guy like Zelensky, he's in great form for Napoli. Look at a guy like Milik. Juventus isn't doing great, but he's not doing bad. So I think that, Poland has some players that are in red-hot form, and I think it's going to be a draw. I think maybe like a 2-2 draw, just because Mexico, they are like, they're known as like the group stage kings. Like every group stage they show up. Like, all right, even if they're not good in every single group stage game, they'll still have a momentous game. Like 2018 they beat Germany. 2014 the way that they tied Brazil, they held on to the host Brazil, and then they completely played Croatia off the field. You go back to 2010, they beat France.
Yeah.
So they always show up in the group stage. And they're, another thing too, Mexico is just very consistent. They always make it out of the group, get eliminated in the round of 16. So there is a chance that Mexico pulls it out of the bag. You mentioned 2014. Like Mexico had a very, very chaotic situation heading into the World Cup. They were able to, just find the right form at the right time, and I thought they were actually very good at 2014. They were very unlucky not to make it to the quarterfinals. The squad is not as good as it was back in 2014.
And a lot of the same players from 2014 are still here.
Still there.
Yeah.
So I think it just goes to show you that we're talking about how Chicharito deserves a spot in this team because there really is no one else to replace him, and this is a guy that's now playing in the MLS, right? So granted, he's been good in the MLS, and the MLS is not a bad league anymore, but still, I think that just goes to show you like who's there. I mean, Santi Jimenez, okay. Henry Martin from Club America.
Club America, yeah.
But they don't have experience, though. So it's just, I think that this is going to be a bold take. I think Mexico doesn't go to the knockout stage. I think this will be the first time since 1990 that Mexico will not be in the knockout stage of the World Cup. And it's not so much Mexico, because I think Mexico could pull through with this squad. I think Saudi Arabia is going to have a really good tournament. I think they're going to be one of the surprise teams for many reasons. You talked about the league being shut down. They're going to play 6 friendlies, and all the Saudi players all play in the Saudi league. They all know each other. It's a very good team collective. They have experience from 2018. Their manager, he is a guy that specializes in doing big things with small teams. Not only that, just it's in the Middle East. It's in Qatar. Qatar and Saudi Arabia aren't on the best terms, so you got to expect that this team is they want to perform well in this context. Also, there's going to be a lot of Saudi fans that are going to be there, so I think it's going to be really close. But I think let's say maybe Mexico ties Poland, lose to Argentina, and narrowly lose to Saudi Arabia, or tie Saudi Arabia, but then
we
Saudi
would
Arabia.
bottom out.
Yeah.
We would.
I think that's very possible. So, what do you think about Mexico finishing where do you think they're going to finish in the group, and how do you think each match is going to pan out?
I still like to keep some hope, not to qualify out, but not to be like bottom of the group, right? I see the same thing. I see us actually. Well, I actually see a loss against Poland, a narrower loss against Argentina, because we want to prove that we won't always be their dog or whatever, and beating Saudi Arabia. Now that would still have us finishing third, of course, because I think Saudi Arabia will lose every game. Although, to your point, maybe not as by wide a margin as they would have in the past, given the fact that they're playing together and they shut down the league. But third, not getting out the group.
Yeah. So far, not really looking that great for CONCACAF teams. But anyway, let's go on to Costa Rica.
All right, up next, Costa Rica, Los Ticos. I still feel so many great memories back for when they reached the quarterfinals back in 2014. But the issue, along with Mexico, it's mainly the same players and a bunch of unknowns now.
Yep.
I'm not wrong. Even their stars now, not only are they old, but Navas is a bench warmer at PSG. He's not winning Champions Leagues with Real, right? It's an older generation. How do you view this balance? Experience, youth, and they are again in the same situation where they are on paper the weakest team in the group.
Yeah, I think that, that hybrid could work out well. I mean, we saw in the qualifiers, especially in the ending stretch, they pulled out some really clutch results. And you had veterans, with injecting experience in the team, but then you also had a bunch of youth guys that were just young and energetic and fast. Does that translate to the World Cup though? I'm not sure. Maybe in a different group, but this group, they're like you said, just look at their squad. They're the weakest team by far. I think there is a gap there. That's not to say Costa Rica is a bad team. I think a lot of this just rests on their veterans though, because these young and upcoming guys, they've played in World Cup qualifiers. Maybe they're at the last Gold Cup, but they've never been at like a major tournament like this before. Versus you look at the guys like Navas or Campbell or Borges or Ruiz, they have been. So I think this World Cup rests on them, and if they're able to pull out some of their best performances, really roll back the year, specifically Navas, I think that they could do well. Maybe surprise a few teams here and there. I mean, people were saying the same thing or similar things about Costa Rica in 2014 when they were in a really, really tough group. They were easily the worst team, easily the worst team.
There were 3 World Cup winners. Now they're just with 2, so they're a little bit better.
Yeah, and then they topped the group. They didn't just squeak through; they topped the group. Granted, the team was much better back then than it is now.
Right.
But I mean, I think the 2018 World Cup. You look at how they played there. The veterans were okay, there was a visible decline in form, and as a result, they slipped through the cracks and they got eliminated in the group stage. Maybe the injection of youth into this team can revitalize the squad, but I don't really think so. I mean, if you look at the strengths and weaknesses, just the age difference in the squad. You have guys that have, I've been saying this already, no experience versus guys that have a ton of experience, but they're very, very old. There's not a middle ground. You don't have a guy in his prime. You don't have guys that are 28, 29, 30. You have guys that are in their mid-30s, and then guys that are in their teens or early 20s. So because of that, I don't really see much of this Costa Rican team.
Right. I mean, just to go on that point, even for 2014, not to make it seem less than it is, but you could see the writing on the walls. The 3 Lions with Roy Hodgson, they were absolute bottle jobs, right? Here, Germany looks like a unit. Spain with their coach, Luis Enrique, they look really forceful as well. I would say the game against Japan, although it might be a little bit more even, but we saw that they beat the U.S. 2-0 very convincingly.
It would have been more if not for Matt Turner.
Right? So to that point, these teams are far more grouped together. They play much better, right? They have coaches that, even though in the case of Germany, they came in a little bit more recently, but they really got it, they got their system down quick. I just don't see a hole for Costa Rica to really get through it. I see them finishing bottom.
I am going to agree with you right there. I mean, it's just, it's hard to predict a miracle, but, who could have predicted Costa Rica in 2014? I don't think that we're going to see a repeat of that, though. Now, I hope I'm wrong. It'd be cool to see Costa Rica completely upset the balance of things, because everyone's pretty much nailed on, Spain and Germany are going through. But, I thought that it might be close between Japan and Costa Rica. But if I'm being honest, you look at Japan's last few results, Japan looks like a pretty decent team. And if one team in this group is going to upset the top 2, it's more likely going to be Japan. So, unfortunately for Los Ticos, I think they will be 4th as well. So, let's go into Canada, last CONCACAF team. All right, so let's look on the last team in CONCACAF that's in the World Cup, and we have Canada. Now, Canada, in my opinion, and I think you agree as well, is in probably the most interesting group, probably the closest thing we have to the group of death. So their games they should be fun to watch or interesting to watch. Now, when you look at this squad, I don't think they have a lot of experience. Now, they were very good at the Gold Cup. They went very far in that, but they don't have big tournament experience. They weren't at the last World Cup. I mean, this is the first time Canada's been at the World Cup since, I believe, either 1986 or 82, something like that.
86, yeah.
So, but the squad is full of just young and energetic players, and sometimes you can even argue that because they have no World Cup experience, that they don't have the pressure, because they don't really know what to expect, so they're just going there to play for fun. Alphonso Davies is the guy to watch out for. Obviously, everyone knows Alphonso Davies, one of the best left backs in the world. At one point, you can even argue maybe he was the best left back in the world in 2020. And now he has some injury problems here and there, but he's still very, very talented. I think Kyle Larin as well as Jonathan David up top, very reliable strike force. They completely dominated CONCACAF. And that's another thing too. Canada statistically was the best team in CONCACAF, and if you watch all the games, you look at their performances, they fully deserved to just qualify right through in that top spot. I think another guy to watch out for is Eustáquio, the Portuguese Canadian who plays for Porto. He's tearing it up in the Champions League currently.
He played at Cruz Azul for a little bit, actually.
Really.
Well, he never played a full game. He got injured.
Okay, he has an interesting career trajectory there. Fun name to say as well.
Yeah.
But he's very good at the Gold Cup. That's the first time I really saw him play, and I was like, wow, this guy. First of all, I was like, this guy's Canadian.
Eustáquio.
Eustáquio, and he was playing I think for Braga at the time. I was like, this guy's Canadian, but there are a lot of Portuguese in Canada. But yeah, I think he will be a guy to watch out for, pulling the strings, distributing the ball out to Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. What do you think about the strength and weaknesses for this squad?
Strength would be finishing top of CONCACAF and not having the pressure, because their fans will go to that tournament just to have fun, right? Being there is already enough for them. The weakness, I don't think they have enough preparation. They didn't have a great string of friendlies. In fact, wasn't there a boycott from the players towards the FA earlier in the summer?
There was some controversy.
There was some controversy. So that
not the best situation.
That's not a great situation going into the World Cup. But they have some good characters in the dressing room. Like, for example, their left back is a memester online, and he can play anywhere from left back to left wing to center mid. So that versatility helps. I think overall, though, it's hard to place them in this group because I think they're such a wild card. I saw them really go head to head with Mexico and the U.S. and look so convincing against teams that are, I guess, more of the status quo in CONCACAF, right? That are going to do well in the World Cup. But that I'm gonna cap it there. I'm gonna say that the lack of testing by actual top quality teams is what's gonna hinder their progress in this tournament.
Yeah, I think that it's a group that's very tough because every team in this group has a realistic chance of going through. I mean, Croatia, they were just runners-up at the last World Cup. Yes, some of their star players have gone or regressed in age, but they do have a lot of talented youngsters coming through as well. Look at Belgium, they've declined a little bit and they've kind of fallen short of expectation, but they're still one of the most talented squads in the entire world, and they have just absolutely world-class guys like Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, or Thibaut Courtois. And then Morocco, a lot of people are writing off Morocco, and I think, maybe you could have written them off because Ziyech wasn't in the team, but now they got a new manager, Ziyech is back in the team, and they're one of the best teams in Africa, and a lot of people are really underestimating them, and that could be to their detriment. So it's a group that you can easily see Canada finish fourth, but at the same time, it's so up in the air that anything could happen, and I think that there's always going to be a big team that gets scalped at the World Cup early on. Look at last World Cup 2018, you had Germany going out in the first round. I think Belgium might be that team this time around. So that opens up one of the spots going through. I think, like I said, Croatia or Morocco could easily make it through. But I've been a little pessimistic throughout this video. My head is telling me that Canada gets eliminated in the group stage, but my heart is telling me that they find some way to get through. I mean, their manager is a very good manager. I think maybe he can just motivate these guys and inspire them to a knockout round appearance. I don't think that they'll top the group. I think it's going to be really close, but I think they will sneak in second. Now, in the round 16, if they do make it, they'll realistically play Spain or Germany. That's pretty much it there. My optimism is not that ambitious. Yeah. So, but still, that would be a great result for Canada, making it to the round of 16, especially building upon that experience for the 2026 World Cup. So, yeah, I'm saying, very, very close second place finish, and you're saying group stage exit.
I'm gonna go bottom up to make it a little bit more thrilling. I'm gonna go Croatia to actually be the team to fail.
Which
Morocco,
is very possible. Yeah.
Morocco, Canada, and then Belgium.
Okay.
I do see them going through.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, out of the 4 teams, I said the U.S. go through, Mexico and Costa Rica miss out. Canada joins the knockout round as well. What about you?
The U.S. doesn't go through. Mexico as well. Costa Rica as well. They don't go through. But Canada is the saving grace.
Okay, so Canada will be the flagship of CONCACAF in Qatar. Very interesting. It's interesting to see where we disagree, where we agree. I feel like we agree on most points. It's just the final, like, okay, how does this end up for the team? What's the overall result?
Right.
That's where the disagreement is. But I hope the best for all the CONCACAF teams. Obviously, as an American, it's kind of hard for me to root for Mexico, but I have no problem with rooting for Costa Rica or Canada. I hope they do well. I'll be excited to watch all their games. Even though I'm not rooting for Mexico, it's still going to be really exciting to watch all their matches because, I think the first two matches that sold out at the World Cup were Argentina versus Saudi Arabia, which makes sense because Messi's last World Cup, and then Saudi Arabia, all the Saudis coming over. But Argentina versus Mexico was completely sold out. I think that was the first game to be sold out. So it'll be really interesting to see, the fans' response, the fans' displays. Maybe they can motivate Mexico to do better. Who knows? But I am very excited to watch all these CONCACAF teams at the World Cup. Who knows? They could all do terrible, or they could all do great. But anyway, guys, let us know what you think is going to happen in the comments below. Do you think that we're overrating these teams or underrating them? Do you think that we're missing something? There's a player that we didn't mention, or a manager, or a style or formation, something like that. Let us know. Type in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If there's a specific team or region of teams you want us to focus on, make sure to type that in the comments below. But anyway, guys, I'm Brandon.
I'm Oscar.
This has been the Football Block. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.